This is how far we are on this. You're making this with me as I tell you the story. This is like scalloped potatoes, similar, but no meat. Okay, so he started the church, and I was at the Bethany Hills. You can look that up. It's a paranormal site. They've got videos on it and stuff. My daughter won a writing contest much later. You know, this is like in the early 2000s for school. She wrote in all these counties, had to write a scary story for Halloween, and she wrote about the Bethany Hills. And she just made up this story out of a dream, she said. And she won it for all of them. And she was like one of the littlest ones. But he's working out in the garden. He's working hard out there. So, that was just by chance. Anyway, they wanted people to go out to the home because they're going to get money per head. Now, you're looking at things that are going to happen like that again with the asylums and stuff like that. That's why they're getting you used to it. Like, look, and we see these people, these poor people, they do need a place. There's people that need places, but they don't have to be like that. But at the time, my the Grandpa Frank Horsch was letting soldiers stay. If they wanted work, he knew the farms that were hiring. There was plenty of industry to get them jobs, or they could work on the railroad, whatever they wanted. But they wanted the state home. So they were like taking people off just basically kidnapping them right off. If you didn't have a ride, there was a little girl there, a little black girl from down south that didn't get picked up by her ride. She stayed in Genesee, it was called the Poor House at one time, the Genesee County Poor House or something. She was there her whole life because she didn't get a ride. And there was lots of people like that. They found suitcases in the attic and stuff. It was crazy. Terrible, terrible. I'm not going over it offhandedly, but you can Google those things, and I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it because there's plenty to see, and you can look that up. I won't waste your time with that when you can look it up. Because they wanted that, they ended up, surprise, surprise, this is how fire departments come about back in the day, was you didn't have insurance. And if you didn't have a card on your door that you had insurance, then they didn't save your place because they had buckets of water and like everybody wasn't paid up. You didn't pay for water like they did now. Most people had wells in their backyard, believe it or not. This is before city water and all this stuff was the way it is now, because they're giving you back things that we already had. They take it and then maybe they give you back a little piece at a time, which is very similar to what's going on now with, you'll own nothing and be happy. You buy a new car, but you have to get a subscription to it. It's not the same, but it's very similar. Okay. So they burned that boarding house down and he didn't rebuild. My Larkin family, I told you, they're from Ireland, and they all came over from the bridge from Canada, over the Peace Bridge. And my Grandpa Joe Larkin, he worked, he started the Elks Lodge in the town. He also had a lot to do with the moose. He might have even started the moose. They owned tons of property with the railroad and stuff. They just bought a lot of property and stuff, and that's all gone. My grandpa tried to figure that out and stuff, and I'm sure there's much more to that, but I'm not getting into that. I'm getting into it because I'm looking at it, and it's all the Gilded Age and how people were, how things changed hands and how the government became something different. Horatio Spafford is my great-great-grandfather on up the line. Same people. Sarah Spafford's my grandmother, a Cahoon. And her uncle was the one that went to Jerusalem and started the Utopian Society, the American Colony in Jerusalem, which is now a hotel, the American Colony Hotel. And there's stories about that. You can Google that as well. He lost his family in the village of Havre, shipwreck all of his children, and before that, in the 1871 Chicago fire. His father is my grandfather, and he wrote the New York State Gazetteer, a couple of them. He was an inventor, a polymath, brilliant man, wanted, he was a pacifist, didn't want to be in the war, but he was named after a man, Horatio Gates Spafford, that was in the war. He was named for, Horatio Gates was in the war. That's my grandpa's name. And he was named for that Gates, not the same people as the baddie. But anyway, still named for him. And he's, when you look him up on Wikipedia, they say he was bad with his money, but he put all his money to make these gazetteers and go look and get the information. They wouldn't even give him postage. And then they write about him like he just wanted a library named after him. He wanted everybody to have books and everybody to be able to read. And for good or bad, people will say, well, it's the education system, it started there and stuff. I'm just telling you what it was, and if hindsight's 20/20. But him in his case, I've read his works. He had a magazine called The American Antiquarian. just a beautiful man, and just the system just ate him up. He came up with the Bessemer iron ore process. That was 30 years before they ever introduced it, and they said he didn't like follow it up enough. But he also has papers and letters to Thomas Jefferson and James Madison about the U.S. patent laws and how they are not there to protect the inventor, and you might as well keep it to yourself, which is why a lot of the things you don't hear me say, because I've written books, they're not published because I can't seem to find a good way, and neither can anybody. They are data mining right now with all of our troubles and tribulations, and your best bet is to just look at it as get out what you want and keep the most important details that really got you to where you are now, like in this healing journey, on your healing journey, and keep those to yourself, except for the parts that you want to share. And then when you're ready and you still have those parts that are yours, which I refuse to, give up on, because that's what they want, And people are finding that out. Their music stolen off of YouTube and everything else. And it's more about not wanting it. When you're gaslit and all these things have happened, you may feel like, oh, no one will like it. No one sees my videos. I mean, I'm like basically talking to myself. I figure I'm totally on like the burn. That's called on the burn in prison, when you work in a prison. And I've been on the burn since I left. I'm sure of it because of what happened. But none of that, I'm thankful I lived through it. None of it makes me upset in a way that like I can't get up and say every single day is such a God blessing on my life and on my husband's life and our kids. And just so thankful, because this is a time when you're going to see more and more people falling in different ways. And don't be that. Don't get caught up in the fervor of the situation, that these things are so wrong that you get jammed up. Because I'm reading those books and those stories in St. Anthony's Messenger. My other aunt worked for St. Joseph's magazine and wrote the story of the Holy Family for her whole life, 30 years. She wrote a book called Joseph, about Joseph of Arimathea, and about Joseph, the King of Egypt. She wrote for the magazine she sold their magazine, and when I went to Mount Angel Abbey, they said it was just a soap opera. So that's where you're at. The troubles, people were dying in Ireland for Irish Catholics being completely marginalized, genocide on them. And when I read the West Coast publications of that,